everyone, it's Leslie from Hindy's Libraries, and welcome to Let's Get Literary. Today, I'm sitting down with N.D. Byma, author of 5 Minute Superheroes. We'll talk about his new book, his other works, what inspires him, and together discuss the importance of literacy and why it's crucial that we do whatever we can to get books into the hands of the children who need them the most. So let's welcome N.D. Byma. And no, I'm not anywhere special, but it's so nasty outside that I thought I'd cheer myself up with this beautiful tropical background.
How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I'm so glad you could chat with us. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, again, thank you for joining. And I'm so excited to hear about your books. I actually peeked at your website and took a look at a whole bunch of them.
Yeah,
Before we dive into them, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
sure. Here, I'm gonna adjust the volume a little bit. But yeah, I've been writing for about a little bit over 6 years now, and I absolutely love it. I started just kind of on a whim. I wanted to write one book just to say I did, and it kind of caught fire from there, and the ideas kept coming, and I loved seeing how it impacted kids and adults with writing, and I couldn't stop, and it's just kind of taken on a life of its own since then.
And where do you live? Where are you chatting with us from?
Right. I am actually in Beaverton, Oregon.
Wow.
So, yeah,
How are things going for you over there during quarantine life?
it's every day is a new adventure. I have a 1-year-old and a 9-year-old. So, homeschooling and working full time and doing the book thing too. Everything is it's an adventure. It's fun. We're having a great time, just kind of taking it in and enjoying the moments that we get. But yeah, things are going along.
It's tough, right? Between, trying to get those kids on Zoom and trying to entertain them while
Oh
answering
my gosh.
calls and trying
Hmm.
to balance it all. It's a new world here that we're in.
It is. It's insane, to think of how the world changed just in a couple months. Um, it's hard to wrap your head around it, but I'm very conscious of the fact that this isn't going to happen. Probably, hopefully, I guess, again in our lifetime. So just these moments, just being able to spend time with your family, you know.
I agree. And I think that, having read your book this morning,
Yeah,
I really took a step back as a mom. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old.
yeah.
And I want to talk about your book because, first of all, it's beautiful to look at. The
Thank
illustrations
you.
are phenomenal. But the book is called 5 Minute Superheroes. And the premise of the book is these children basically want to play pretend with their families and their mom
Hmm.
and dad. And in just a few minutes, all it took was for the parents to kind of stop what they were doing. I know mom had to cook and dad was at work, and they played with their kids and transformed that afternoon. And
Yeah.
before you go into your book, I just want to tell you how it struck me. I work full time.
Mhm.
My kids are now home, and I run the nonprofit with my co-founder David, who couldn't join us.
Yeah.
And for me, it's very hard to take a minute and stop what I'm doing during work hours, after work hours. And your book really hit me because right away the dad said, I'm waiting for a call or I have to take care of something, and then he kind of stopped and said, I'm going to go play with him.
Hmm.
I think especially now when we're confined to our homes and our children are with us 24/7, um, everyone kind of gets wrapped up into whatever routine they created.
Hmm.
And it really, really hit a chord with me because just, today my son goes, can I show you something? And I said, oh, I'm in the middle of a meeting and then I have to write an email. And then I said, no. And I said,
Hmm.
I'll get back to you later. And then I read your book and I said, did I have to say no? What would
Hmm.
that be a memory for us that we could have made? So, what inspired you to write this book, and is that the message you were going for?
Honestly, that's exactly what I was going for. Everything I write, I want to write for the adults as much as the kids. I mean, honestly, the adults are the ones that have to read it time and time again. So I want my books to be fun and lighthearted, but have something of substance in there. Everything I write, there's something for the grown-ups as much as there is for the kids. The kids will see a lighthearted story, and the grown-ups will hopefully have something more impactful that comes through for them. And that was my intention. I just a couple minutes of stepping away and having fun with your kids, but I wanted to frame it in a way that would be, it would resonate with adults. there's all sorts of little nods in there about, just, when the parents, they tag out almost immediately at the grand battle at the end because, I mean, we get worn out way faster than our kids do. And it's, more so about just kind of being present, that the parents were there and having a good time for, 5 minute increments, but they don't have to be super parents. They just have to take the time, and that is a profound experience for the kids.
Have you found that with your children, after writing this book, you're much more conscious uh,
Yes.
when they come to you and they ask you for something, you take that second think and you're like, wait a minute.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. My son, he's got a million things to say, and he loves Pokemon and all that stuff, and he wants to tell me all about the things that he's finding, these things that are big, impactful things to him. So I try to be way more conscious of that. I'm in no way perfect. He sometimes picks incredibly busy times to have something to show me, but it just takes a minute or just a little bit of attention, and I see it impacts him. It gives him that security he needs when I just take even a couple seconds, and it just changes his behavior and everything. He seems, more refreshed in a second, of just acknowledgement of having my attention. So yeah, I try to be conscious, and no way am I perfect. The characters in my books are usually, very, they have part of who I am in them. I think just people in general, but they're more of an ideal of what I wish I could be.
Tell me why you chose to make it in more of a graphic novel style.
Hmm.
So there was a little bit of anime in there in terms of
Hmm.
illustrations, and such a big digression between what mom, dad, and the twins look like, and then
Yeah.
what they're embodied in as superheroes, and the
Hmm.
style of the book itself. It was such a great choice. But what made you go that route?
I wanted it to be very adventurous, and I gave a lot of liberties with to my illustrator. He's a good friend of mine, Jason, um, and we went back and forth on styles for quite a bit. And I wanted it to be like a graphic novel. I wanted it to be an adventure book. Um, and as far as how the family looks, I wanted to have a very broad, appealing family. I think uh, it's really important for kids to be able to see someone that looks like them. So it's a they they're a biracial family, and that's absolutely on purpose, because I want kids from everywhere in the world to be able to see a darker skinned character, and they can feel some common ground with them as well. And as far as the heroes they turn into, um, I wanted the Joe, Joey, Electro Joe, he took on more of like a Dragon Ball Z look,
Yeah.
and to me that that's absolutely on purpose, because kids, when they pretend, they're going to pretend in a style that they know. So I just didn't, Joey in this story, he's a huge Dragon Ball Z fan. So when he you know transforms into his hero self, he looks like his heroes, the characters he enjoys. And in a way, I guess, he was seeing his dad in that same way. His dad is kind of just in it for the ride, just to play. But, Joey sees his dad now as a Dragon Ball Z character also. And so it's kind of through the kid's eyes that these people are who they are. And the parents are just rolling with it.
I love that. Something that also was interesting to me, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about it. As the book ended and they sat down to eat,
Hmm.
the parents turned into parents, but the
Hmm.
kids stayed in superhero form. And I
Yeah.
did a double take on that, and I kind of like swiped back up to see what
Yeah.
made you keep the kids in superhero form even when pretend time ended.
I just loved the visual. I thought of some of those old classic paintings of a family at a dinner table, kind of a Norman Rockwell feel to it. But I wanted it to be funny. I wanted it to be the kids are still in character, and even when the parents are dusting themselves off and saying it's time to get ready for dinner, the kids as these big bold superheroes, they're talking like kids, and they're acting like kids, and that's just kind of how they see themselves. Still, they're still living in that moment, and the parents are obviously moving on to the next chore at hand, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. I took it as kind of, I was getting very moved by this book, I'm telling you. And
That's awesome.
I took it as like the kids still felt like superheroes
Yeah.
because the parents played with them.
Hmm.
That's how I took it. And then I'm like, oh my God, I got to go find my kids and play with them for an hour because
That's awesome.
and they tuned out. The
Hmm.
kids still felt like inspired and they felt that power and that glow of the
Yeah.
superhero from the play. And
Yeah.
that's how I took it, which I thought was, it was so cool. And it's such a colorful book. What
Awesome.
got you into writing in the first place? What made you go this route?
I wanted to write one book just to say I could. That's just kind of my personality. I want to try everything, whether or not I'm successful. I want to try. So I wrote one book, and it went really well. It resonated well. I only did 100 copies, and I quickly sold out. So I had to do a second print of that one, and I had another idea for another book, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. And it was one of those. I mean, if you have the time for the story, it's kind of a fun story. Uh, I worked at a restaurant as a manager, and a gentleman would always come in, and at night and right before we closed, he'd always get breakfast for dinner. He was, probably in his late 70s, early 80s, and I had one of the copies of my books there that a waiter wanted to buy for their child that was behind the bar. So the gentleman's there. He's eating his dinner, and he sees the book behind the bar, and he asks if he can look at it. I'm like, sure, that's fine. So he's looking at it. He's like, this is great. You have other ideas? And I tell him about the idea for my next book, The Letter, and he's like, well, I actually illustrate kids books. I'm like, that's awesome, good for you. And he's like, to date we've sold 8 million copies or something. I'm like, wow, I, yeah, that's fantastic. And his name is John, and he's the illustrator for Bob Books. So yeah, and it was one of those moments where, I mean, you couldn't have planned it that he would be there when there was a book behind the counter, and he just told me, I was like, whatever you do, no matter what blocks you run into, don't quit. And then I was like, well, that's if that's not some kind of sign, I don't know what is. And I wrote the letter after that, and that book has really helped a lot of people too. And I kept going. I wanted to put the feelings of insecurity and frustration and self doubt and everything in a easily to digest form, and that's what each of my books is aimed at.
I love that. When you work, what is your working space like? And what do you work on first? Do you do the illustrations? Do you have page by page? What's your process?
My process, I just come up with the book. Oftentimes I just let the book play out in my head. I just have an idea and I start thinking it through and kind of seeing it like a movie in my mind. I drive for work, decent amount, so I'll just turn off the radio and just think about the story and what I would want to see. And then after that I just quickly sketch out the pages and just do these. I'm an awful artist, but I sketch them all out, storyboard all the pages, and then I look for an illustrator that has the same feel that I'm looking for. And after I find someone that really kind of complements the story I'm trying to tell, we connect, and then we get the illustrations done, and then I circle back after the illustrations are done because I try to give a lot of leniency and leeway with illustrators to kind of put their own spin on it. And after we do that, then I'll go back and kind of edit and adjust the stories themselves to fit the illustrations better, so it ends up gelling. So yeah, it's a process, but it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That sounds great. What is your favorite children's book growing up? Or what has kind of stuck in your mind as you
Yeah.
became a children's book author?
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of silly, but the one that I adore this book. It's called Put Me in the Zoo. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. It's about I guess he's just some unnamed animal, but he has different color spots, and he wants to go to the zoo, and they won't let him in because he can change his spots color. He can do all these cool things, but they just keep kicking him out. He's not welcome in the zoo, and then the kids that are there with him, they eventually realize that he's not meant for the zoo. He's meant for the circus. He's meant to showcase himself. um, and I just thought it's such a short book. It's incredibly punchy. If you look at it, it's lighthearted but deeper. It's about, and at least that's the way I see it, is it's about acceptance. It's about finding the right fit in the world for what you're meant to do with your talents, and being able to show the world what you have to offer. And just because one place doesn't realize what you can bring doesn't make you less valuable.
Love that. That's a great message. That's a wonderful message. What do you like to do when you're not writing?
Oh man. Well, I love to cook. I went to culinary school, so
Yeah.
I love cooking. I cook breakfast and dinner every day for my family, and I've played music since I was a kid. I've loved the drums and guitar too, but drums are where my heart's at. So I always have to do things like that, and then spend time with my family.
So maybe like a children's cookbook or like a
Yeah,
cooking series for kids. That
yeah,
would be so cool, right?
that would be a blast. Yeah.
I have a really tough time trying to teach my kids. We're up to scrambled eggs, where they just
Mhm.
pour it into the pot and then
Yeah,
they mix it on the pan. That's pretty much
that's
what.
pretty good.
Yeah. Do you put any hidden secrets in your books, or does your illustrator that are meant for someone to find, or maybe your family or your kids?
Yes, definitely. There's stuff in everything I write. Just fun little nods and things like that. So in absolutely all of the books, there's something in there. And with 5 Minute Superheroes, that actually carries over. I released a different book, an alphabet book, at the same time.
I
So I
want
did two
to.
books.
I saw that.
That's awesome.
Great book.
And so there's that one, and there's actually Sparklecorn from 5 Minute Superheroes is in that alphabet book, and then I have a new book coming out shortly with the minor league baseball team for the Arizona Diamondbacks that we have out here. They asked me to make a book with their mascot, and there's a couple of little nods of Sparklecorn and one of the Teddy Beasts in that one as well. So there's kind of little things hidden throughout all the stories.
So tell us what that new book's about.
That one, yeah, it's called My Friend Barley, and it's about the mascot for the Hillsborough Hops, Barley. He goes to a park, and there's a girl there, and she's upset, and it's his friend Lana, and he asks her what's wrong. She says, there's a lot of kids in the park and they all speak different languages, and I want to play, but we have no common ground. What do I do? So Barley, in all his goofy wisdom, he decides he's going to do a magic show, and he's not a very good magician, and it blows up, and he decides he wants to do a juggling demonstration to bring all the kids together, and that of course completely falls apart, and he tries a few different things to get these kids, to find something in common. And then finally he has an idea, and he leaves, and he comes back, and he dumps a bag full of baseball gear on the ground. And then they all say, baseball, or let's play baseball in their own language. And they all get together and play, and they play a game of baseball together because, playing and sports and, community are bigger than the language barrier. So yeah,
Is it nice? Is it also a graphic novel, or is more like a
it's
storybook?
more of a kid's book. Yeah, it's more of a kid's book.
That's so fun. And when is that expected out?
It's hopefully coming out. Well, if the season starts here in the next month or two, ideally it'll be coming out sometime soon. So we'll see. That's
Nice.
that's
We'll
up to
start
them. Yeah.
doing that. What are you reading right now?
Oh man, what am I reading right now? I just got through a Harlan Coben novel. My good friend Marcus Brotherton actually just had a new book come out as well, and it's fantastic. Yeah, I highly recommend it. Um, he's a fantastic author. If you haven't checked out Marcus Brotherton, he's worked with Gary Sinise and a bunch of other people. He's just a brilliant author. So I'm kind of going through his catalog and reading some of those as well. But suspense and mystery are where my heart is at a lot of the time. So Harlan Coben's been keeping me occupied.
I want to talk about the I Love You book also. Can you tell
Yeah,
me a little about that book? Because I thought that was so cute. And I loved, by the way, our co-founder who can't be here. He has a heart for Hawaii. And I loved that the U stood for ukulele. You
yeah,
don't see that. And as a mom reading board books with my kids, when I read them for the last, I don't know, 5 years,
yeah,
you always umbrella, right?
yeah,
I loved that you made you ukulele. And then you
yeah.
talked about you and the letter U versus not the letter U. Tell us about that book.
Sure. I wanted to write a board book. I'd been asked, through the years if I have any board books because, people with little ones, it's difficult for them to have something that, the kids can chew on and it'll be okay. So I wrote this one, but I wanted it to have some substance. I it bothers me when the books are just like A is for apple, B is for banana kind of thing. I wanted it to have some feeling. So I went through and I got the idea from My Favorite Is You of just, talking about all these things. Each page has a theme. Each 3-letter block has a theme to it, and no matter what they're talking about, the narrator is saying, or the reader is saying to the little one they're reading to, but you're better. Spending time with you is better than anything else. And that was fun. Honestly, it just started, each one having a theme was a challenge, because I wanted them to, have some moderately challenging words that kids could ask, like, what does that mean? And it, spark a conversation with whoever's reading the book to them. But it would also, teach them new things. So the ukulele page was on the music page, and the drums are in there too. That was uh, a given, especially with my love for drums. But yeah, I wanted it to be an opportunity for the reader to tell whoever they're reading to, like, I love you. Like, all these things are amazing in life, but you are better. You are more important. You are more, you're special to me.
It's a great message. And I think that having these messages and kind of hidden meanings and deeper meanings in your book is so important, because I mean, especially now, but forget about the pandemic that we're facing. Parents are spending so much of their time with children during bedtime, early morning hours, and we're reading books and we're trying to instill these messages. So having books to guide us, and
Mm-hmm.
not so much in a you must teach your child that this, because that also doesn't resonate with the children.
No.
Having these messages kind of built in, and seeing children take these messages away from the books in a different light, like you said, than
Yeah.
parents do. It's kind of this double meaning. And I think it's very important, because a lot of times it is, our eyes kind of glaze over when we read the same books, and
Mm-hmm.
they're either flat or they have no exciting parts to it. We tune out. We just read the
Yeah.
words. So to
Mm-hmm.
see your messages, the colors in them, the illustrations, and I like that also your books each have a different style to them. I thought that was very interesting. They
Yeah.
have a different flavor. Everyone is its own entity.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was very cool.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I thought that was very eye-catching to the reader, and of course to the children. How
Yeah.
long does it take you from the minute you decide, I'm going to write a book that's going to be a graphic novel about superheroes, to the minute you're holding it in your hand?
I usually do one a year, just to try to limit myself. But if the reins were off, and being a self-published author is always the difficult route. But if that wasn't a factor, I could, it wouldn't take me more than a couple of months. The book printing itself takes a couple months, but as far as the process of writing the book, I can usually have a book, you know, first, second draft done within a week or two, and then from there it's just the illustrator just jumps right in and we start working on it, and honing in all the illustrations. So usually it's the timeline I usually go by is about a year, but if that was not a factor, I'd probably say I could have new books out every 3-4 months.
And are you the type that sees, the first proof of your book and you change it all up and scribble over it? Or do you trust your gut and you stick with it and you make minor changes? Because everyone has their,
Mhm.
kind of way.
I am My instinct is always to tear the whole thing up and go back to the drawing board, but I have to stop. I can't do that. It's so not productive, and I realize that that's just part of the creative process too. I mean, most of the time creators don't like their own creation as much as other people. You just have to trust the thought that got you there. And then when I see people pick up the book and resonate with it, and smile and read it with their children, then I feel like I did a good job. But I try to leave it alone as much as I possibly can. Otherwise, I'd have no books, because I'd still be working on the first one.
What has been your biggest aha moment since you've started the whole writing process from your first book? What has kind of been one moment or one story, whether it's a child who came up to you or a parent, that really has stuck with you?
One of the biggest impacts for me was with Raleigh the Silent Slug, which was my third book. I wrote that book about the fear of stepping out, and the fear of essentially the idea of me writing these books and anyone taking a chance on something. It's putting yourself out there, and the fear of how you'll be accepted. Raleigh doesn't want to speak. He's afraid he'll either sound silly and everyone will laugh at him, or he'll sound scary and everyone will be afraid. So he thinks it's safer to just be silent. And one day he has to speak and save his friends. And he realizes that his voice does sound silly. That was really important to me. I didn't want it to be everything is okay. When he finally speaks, I wanted to be like his fears were realized, but the important thing is that everyone loved him. Nobody batted an eye when they heard him speak. They were just blown away by hearing him speak, and they loved him for who he was. And that book, like I said, was about stepping out. And after that came out, someone reached out to me from a school district out here, and she was a speech pathologist, and she said that this would actually, really work well with the kids that have difficulty speaking, and people, children that have issues with speaking and verbalizing. And she asked if she could buy some copies. I just donated copies. I just want to help. It was one of those things where I never literally meant to have him struggle with his voice, and I never anticipated the book being interpreted that way. So when she reached out to me, I was like, wow, that's so neat to create something and see people take it and adapt it to what they need it for, which wasn't my intention at all. But I felt so blessed and grateful to know that these kids are benefiting from these books. That it was awesome. But it makes rethink the English class, right? And looking into all these books, what were they really meaning? What was this a metaphor for? And other times as well, people have brought up things like that. I'm like, I realized like, oh, I see what you were trying to say in this book. I'm like,
Right. It's
awesome.
so interesting.
Yeah,
Any piece of art, any work that you
yeah,
create, you see it from one lens,
yeah,
and you don't know how they're going to perceive it. And then all of a sudden they're coming at you with these different perspectives, right? That
yeah.
you never even knew about. But it's so interesting to see how everyone takes it and adapts it, like you said, to what is meaningful for them.
Mhm.
There's like so many layers to your books.
Yeah. It's like playing music. The best songs, in my opinion, are the ones that are kind of open ended. It's not a complete 100% contained story, and same with the books. Yeah, if you leave gaps, people will transpose their life into those gaps, and then the book becomes special to them. That song becomes special to them. It's like that song was written for them in their situation. It wasn't. But the same with the book. If you leave it open enough, people will put their own life into it. And that's what I was aiming for with It's Not Goodbye, See You Soon, which is one of my more recent books. That's about the fear of saying goodbye. I didn't want it to be heavy-handed about loss. That wasn't the goal. It was just about the fear of saying goodbye and how that manifests in this boy's life 3 times as he's growing, and how it's always okay. But I left it open so people can, if they're experiencing loss, that book is about loss. And if they're experiencing, separation, distance, that book is about that. It's about whatever you need it to be.
It's like these very philosophical books you've got going on. As a
Yeah,
dad, when you go book shopping for your children, what do you look for in a children's book when you want to purchase it, besides your own other authors?
yeah. uh, I like something that's just well written and beautifully illustrated. But I like something that's written for the kids, especially if I'm looking for something for my kids. I know it sounds odd to say it, but I feel like a lot of children's books are written for the grown-ups completely. The illustration style isn't something the kids can really care about. The topic at hand isn't something the kids will resonate with. So I want something that will have readability and that the kids enjoy, and ideally something with some substance as well, so they can go back to it time and time again. Because if the book isn't engaging, if it doesn't grab their attention, and kids like colors, they like silly characters, they like relatability. If it doesn't have those things, kids are never going to read it again, and that defeats the purpose of paying for the book in the first place, right?
I have to tell you, my daughter, who is going into third grade, she has
Yeah,
taken a loving for graphic novels.
yeah,
So the Babysitters Club just came out with a graphic novel version. We've been reading that, which is so cool. My
that's
5 year
awesome.
old is watching her. So now
Hmm.
he's looking at graphic novels. And I
Yeah.
think also, like you said, the illustrations are a big part of it, which
Hmm.
is why I'm actually going to pick up your book because for my son, I mean, it's the words are simple enough, even though there are some difficult words to challenge him.
Yeah.
But the pictures are so fun and the meaning is so great. I think also as a parent, it's important that when
Yeah.
you look through the book, you find a meaning, but not a how-to book, right? Not like this is
Mhm.
what you must do and how you must live your
No.
life, but just these engaging books that really will resonate with them. I like
Mhm.
to um I like to end my interviews by asking you for your favorite children's book quote.
Oh man, that's that's tough.
One, I know. I like to
Ah, I don't know. I'd probably. I hate to go back to Put Me in the Zoo, but I adore that book so much. It's uh, that just at the end of the book when the kids are saying, telling them like, this is where you need to be, this is where you're going to grow. Just that it just ends on such a a punch where it's solving the problem that he was facing through the entire book, and it's to paraphrase it, it just says, it's beautifully written, but it just says, the zoo is where you need to be, or pardon me, the circus is where you need to be, and it just caps it perfectly. I mean, I know it's not a precise quote, but
well, it
yeah.
discusses how you don't always have to be, where you thought you would be. There's
Right.
a place for everybody, right? And sometimes it
Hmm.
takes time and teamwork and support to find what you're meant to do or where you're meant to be. And
Yeah.
I think that's a great message. I think that that's important for children, especially nowadays. You hear you must be a lawyer, you must be a doctor, you must
Hmm.
follow my path and my family business. You must,
Right.
continue owning this farm that we own or this hotel that we manage. This is your path and it's made for you.
Hmm.
you know, it's important for children to know that they can choose and it
Hmm.
might not
Hmm.
be what they once thought it would be. And I
Yeah.
think that's a great thing. Tell us where our viewers can find your books, where they
Mhm.
can learn more about you. Give us your information.
Sure. ndbyma.com is my website, and all my books are available on there, as well as a comic series that I did with my friend Jason for a little bit, just kind of little bits of life and perspective. But all of that's on there. You can learn more about me and who I am at ndbyma.com, or it's at n.d.byma for Twitter, or pardon me, for Instagram and Facebook, and Twitter is at ndbyma, no dots.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time.